dirty secret of gun ownership is that the greatest threat to the Second Amendment isn't the government, it's the infighting between the owners themselves. This subculture, often seen by outsiders as monolithic, is actually a complex ecosystem defined by 11 distinct, often warring tribes. Their choices in firearms, accessories, and training are not just preferences, they are badges of identity, philosophical statements, and declarations of political allegiance. We are going to decode the lexicon, the loadouts, and the deeply entrenched rivalries that define the modern gun enthusiast. We begin with the tactical enthusiast, a term that surged into the mainstream post-2010, accelerating sharply after the volatility of 2020. This persona is defined by the elevation of modern military aesthetics and equipment into the civilian sphere, specifically for training, home defense, and recreational shooting. Tacti-cool is less a pejorative and more a descriptive identifier for the gear-forward individual, whose visual language is borrowed directly from special operations units, applying it robustly to civilian platforms. The defining characteristic is the treatment of the modular rifle, usually an AR or AK platform, as a capabilities matrix ready for optimization. Every piece of equipment must serve a purpose, even if that purpose is theoretical preparedness. The baseline setup is essential: a reliable red dot optic, a powerful white light, often 1,000 lumens or more, designed to defeat photonic barriers, and a well-integrated sling system, typically a 2-point adjustable design for swift transitions. The tactical mindset argues that illumination and advanced optics are not luxuries, but necessary force multipliers, drastically improving outcomes in low-light, high-stress scenarios. Their philosophy is defensive first, rights focus second, seeing their equipment stack not as mere hardware, but as a commitment to preparedness. Clothing trends toward functional, high-performance textiles, often incorporating modern camouflage patterns like multicam or variations of Ranger green. The iconography, Punisher skulls, aggressive flag patches, morale patches signaling tribal allegiance, is deployed deliberately to establish identity within online communities, whether in build pictures, loadout breakdowns, or the perpetually energetic gear argument threads. Critics often dismiss the look as LARPing, live-action role-playing, suggesting it's too many gadgets chasing cool points. But the reality is, often a newer shooter who engages in rigorous research, perhaps dry firing consistently in their living room, sometimes more often than they actually afford range time. The upside of the tactical movement is profound. It has normalized structured classes, high-speed training, and advanced performance standards across a vastly broader demographic than ever before. The downside, however, lies in the optics in both senses of the word. The aggressive symbolism and public displays, sometimes deemed counterproductive, leading to inevitable cyclical friction with the older guard. This older guard is the FUD, a nickname tracing back to Elmer Fudd, migrating into gun forms as the shorthand for the traditional sportsman. The FUD prizes wood, blued steel, restraint, and an emphasis on heritage-driven sporting use over militarized presentation. The label gained significant currency as tactical aesthetics moved from specialized circles into mainstream range culture, highlighting a cultural and philosophical schism. The FUD's mindset is fundamentally utilitarian and understated. Guns are tools, precision instruments for hunting duck, rabbit, deer, turkey, or bear. They are defined by the season and the field. Consequently, the emphasis is on safe, efficient handling, immaculate fieldcraft, and quiet competence. There is a deep, often vocal skepticism towards accessory stacks, unnecessary range theatrics, and anything that introduces low-probability variables into a predictable system. Their preference for equipment runs toward time-tested over-unders, reliable pump-action shotguns like the Remington 870 or Mossberg 500, and classic bolt-action hunting rifles, specifically the Winchester Model 70 and the Remington 700, models defined by their intrinsic accuracy and timeless aesthetics. While some FUDs may own an AR-15, it is typically relegated to the deep recesses of the safe, kept off social media, and treated as a purely secondary theoretical tool, far removed from the primary sporting battery. Their most common mantra, "Nobody needs an AR." This isn't necessarily a political statement, but a functional one, rooted in the belief that most practical defensive or hunting needs are met with less complex, less visually aggressive platforms. The FUD argues, often correctly, that most defensive shootings occur at contact distance, with few rounds expended, rendering elaborate gear arrays unnecessary. Online, the FUD appears in gentle mockery of the tactical crowd, issuing recurring complaints about excessive muzzle blast at public ranges and constant reminders that the ultimate goal is still simply hitting what one aims at, a foundational skill often overshadowed by gear acquisition. Although often stereotyped as out of touch, clutching their walnut stalks while the younger generation bolts on MLO can guards, the FUD represents continuity, craftsmanship, and discipline. Their weak spot is a persistent tendency to dismiss modern defensive training methodologies and accessories as transient, unnecessary fads. They argue with the tactical crowd primarily over aesthetics and political optics, creating a perpetual deadlock where both sides talk past each other, while the fundamental purpose of marksmanship remains unchanged. Stepping into the professional realm, we encounter the POG, person other than grunt. This is century-old military slang repurposed online to categorize veterans based on their proximity to kinetic combat. The archetype is defined by a procedural, rank-aware temperament that deeply values regulation, doctrine, checklists, and the precise deployment of jargon. The POG mentions their service early and often, sometimes obscuring the fact that their experience may have been primarily logistics, admin, or communications, rear echelon functions. Their technical preference mirrors issued gear: M4-style rifles with mil-spec accessories, ACOGs, advanced combat optical gun sights, or aim-point optics, and regulation plate carriers. They are the gatekeepers of definition, frequently correcting civilians, dismissing competition shooters as unrealistic, and deploying preambles that emphasize institutional authority. Their recurring arguments are dogmatic. Combat-proven platforms will always beat civilian innovations, and Technique X is doctrine for a. The tension here is between adherence to tested military standards and the rapid, performance-driven evolution found in the civilian market. The stereotype often paints the POG as the earnest, slightly confused colonel, lecturing civilians with less than perfect trigger discipline, often wearing multicam or other issued uniform elements, while articulating strict procedural rules. Offline, this is usually a non-combat veteran or a civilian who deeply over-identifies with military characters or roles. Their virtue is discipline, safety adherence, and a focus on reliability, though this often comes with an inflated sense of authority, leading to friction with both high-level operators and general civilian hobbyists. The true operator, in this context, refers to the civilian emulation of special operations imagery, a persona cataloged exhaustively in forum starter texts. This individual is image-forward, treating gear ownership as a direct, visible shorthand for perceived proficiency, embodying competence without the grueling selection course. The uniform is instantly recognizable: patches, specific decals, and the ubiquitous pursuit of night vision devices, NVDs. Aspirational gear often includes quad-tube night vision setups, such as the L3 Harris GP-NVG, even if the reality is a budget PVS-14 or simply the dream of NVDs. The aesthetic favors black or muted streetwear, combined with high-end modular rifles, AK or AR, usually paired with the "no step on snake" or other similar visually coded jokes. Vehicles are practical, often tactical trucks in muted earth tones, dashboards decorated with specific, meaningful stickers. Online, this manifests in milsim forums, AR subreddits, and protracted brand loyalty debates, where the defense of Gadsden flags, thin blue line imagery, and veteran-owned companies becomes central to the identity. Detractors often call this display cosplay, while defenders fiercely point to their attendance at expensive, high-level training classes and consistent practice repetitions. Often, the real-world operator is an airsoft or milsim hobbyist who has successfully cross-pollinated into the live fire environment, occasionally featuring actual veterans who have transitioned into the civilian training industry. Their strength is palpable enthusiasm and an ability to draw newcomers into high-end equipment literacy. Their most predictable flaws are the persistent financial strain caused by the pursuit of ultra-high-end equipment and the notion that the cost of gear somehow equates to competence. Then the cultural pendulum swings dramatically to the mall ninja. This archetype is the subject of mid-2000s forum lore, famously centered around the mythical Gecko 45 saga. The mall ninja blends theatrical claims, fantasy blades, and budget tactical gear into a highly recognizable and parodied character. Their personality projects intimidation without any corresponding training or genuine capability. Their arsenal is characterized by cheap katanas, fantasy knives, excessive amounts of molded nylon, often thigh holsters, and armor concepts that would instantly fail the most basic whiteboard test. They frequently make claims of affiliations with specialized units or esoteric drills, delivered with a straight face, despite a conspicuously thin resume. The tone oscillates between intense, earnest self-belief and a strange, veiled self-awareness that hints at the joke being partially on them. The classic stereotype is the trench coat and fedora combined with a wall of decorative. The modern mall ninja often converges visually with the tacti-cool aesthetic in terms of firearms, but maintains the original priority: appearance first, function and safety much later. Offline, this is typically a younger hobbyist, a martial arts student from a school known for generous grading, or a collector of items best described as purely decorative. The better outcome for the mall ninja is that the initial costume loses its luster, and they move into disciplined pursuits, like historical fencing, forging, or serious, focused shooting. The worst outcome, which is distressingly common, is injury resulting from materials that should never have been trusted outside their original packaging. The community's pejorative label for the extreme end of the accessorizing spectrum is the tactard. This term grew out of tactical excess and flash combat role-playing, settling into a routine critique. The tactard posts a rifle where every available rail space, and often spaces that are not rail spaces, are adorned with equipment. The comment section inevitably becomes a sarcastic exercise in trying to subtract ounces from the catastrophic weight of the firearm. The defining feature is the liberal use of military jargon and insistence on operator authenticity, often without the fundamental background to back up the claims. The rifle setup is a masterpiece of redundancy. Lights, lasers, vertical grips, offset optics, backup irons mounted above the primary optic, magwell flares, and a sling arrangement so complex only an arachnid could manipulate it effectively. Armor and night vision devices are often included in the photo op, even if the range bag contains only a single set of foam earplugs. Online, this generates the too much stuff thread, followed by endless, fruitless debates about aesthetics versus genuine function. Arguments are often made defending the presence of multiple lights and lasers on every single build under the banner of capability, which holds some merit only when the extremely specific, demanding use case actually exists. The meme vocabulary focuses on technical failures, bridged receivers, mounting an optic across the receiver and the handguard, guaranteeing loss of zero, misplaced carry handles, and overall weight that defeats the practical purpose of a carbine. The tactard is usually a civilian enthusiast, a dedicated airsofter, or an individual who views ergonomics as merely a suggestion. While their curiosity and accessory literacy are high, their flaws are immediately evident, even in a still image. They clash universally with minimalists, seasoned veterans, and anyone who prefers a rifle that weighs under 8 pounds fully loaded. Moving away from aesthetics and into pure, measurable performance, we arrive at the gamer. In this context, gamer is the competitive shooting world's term, describing those whose gear and technique are shaped entirely by the clock, the stage design, and the rulebook of organizations like USPSA, IPSC, IDPA, Steel Challenge, and 3-Gun. This archetype coalesced when dedicated competitors began speaking and acting like athletes rather than casual hobbyists. The singular mindset is top-notch performance. Every component selection serves the twin masters of time and points. Pistols and rifles are meticulously tuned to division rules, triggers measured in decimal pounds, often under 2 pounds, and holsters engineered for the absolute economy of motion. Match write-ups are filled with detailed sprint times and performance metrics, accompanied by exhaustive equipment essays treating a simple recoil spring or buffer weight like a doctoral thesis topic. The endless recurring debate that defines the gamer space is whether the esoteric high-speed skills developed in USPSA or 3-gun truly translate to practical defensive applications. The stereotype involves a brightly colored competition belt, a race holster, and an opinion on every conceivable piece of gear. However, the reality is a shooter who possesses unparalleled speed, flawless mechanical technique, and an often surprising willingness to provide help and mentorship at local matches. While they can sometimes come across as elitist, assuming that match tuning equates to real-world survival capability, their contribution is undeniable. They relentlessly push the technical baseline for everyone who watches them clear a complex stage without breaking a sweat. Their primary friction points are with the FUDs, over realism, and the sheepdogs, over priorities. Next, we encounter Bubba, the community's universal term for the extreme do-it-yourself impulse that transforms a cheap surplus rifle into an irreversible cautionary tale. The genesis of Bubba sits in forum threads detailing duct tape optics, Dremel tool jobs performed on treasured SKS carbines, and unsafe hot. As affordable surplus equipment has vanished and prices have escalated, the evidence of Bubba's work remains in photo archives and the occasional cringeworthy gun show table. His mindset is a potent, sometimes toxic combination of confidence and thrift. If a part can potentially be attached with JB Weld and a prayer, it will be. SKS rifles, originally robust fixed magazine workhorses, are frequently subjected to detachable magazine conversions, poorly fitted synthetic stocks, often from companies like Tapco, and accessory rails that hint at utility but rarely align with the rifle's metallurgy. Mosin Nagant rifles lose their historical wood furniture and gain muzzle devices that frequently ignore the original barrel harmonics. Justifications often center on period pricing. It wasn't collectible. The community response mixes reluctant chuckles with empathy. More than one commentator admits to having been a Bubba at 14. Offline, Bubba is a persistent tinkerer, a budget-constrained hunter, or simply an individual who is bored in his garage with a new set of power tools. His redeeming quality is genuine resourcefulness and a capacity for learning, albeit after several expensive mistakes. He eventually learns that the damage inflicted on history with a cutoff wheel is usually permanent. He clashes with collectors, FUDs, and even operators, each for different and highly specific reasons. The meme vocabulary is defined by phrases like, "we had a Dremel," "we had a vision," and the legendary, "hot." The advice remains unchanged after a decade. If it doesn't demonstrably help you shoot better or function more safely, perhaps leave the tools in the drawer. The statistical center of the gun community is the normie, a common internet term that migrated into gun spaces to mark the mainstream and flashy owner. This archetype is pragmatic, entirely unconcerned with subcultural aesthetics, and focused exclusively on straightforward, practical self-defense. The normie does not live online the way the other categories do, which, paradoxically, is their most radical trait. Their approach centers on baseline safety and reliability. Their kit is simple: a factory-standard polymer handgun, a Glock 19 or S&W M&P, a simple Kydex or leather holster, and a couple of boxes of common, reliable ammunition. Their online posts read like reasonable questions rather than aggressive declarations. What should I buy? What is legal to? How should I store this? The normie is the statistical majority in nearly all ownership surveys, the person who bought a pistol for home security during a period of civil unrest or crisis, and then simply moved on with life. Their contribution is a raised, pragmatic floor on universal safety standards and acting as a necessary check on the subculture's tendency to spiral into performance cosplay. Their weaknesses are predictable: shallow research, a reliance on often contradictory online advice, and limited exposure to formal training beyond the basic state-mandated class. They brush up against FUDs over what constitutes legitimate use, and against tactical tribes over their minimalist presentation. While most trainers highly appreciate the normies' open-mindedness, online forums occasionally consume them alive if they dare ask what is perceived as a dumb question, though the wiser pages keep the jokes gentle, recognizing that today's normie is tomorrow's devoted student. Elevated by the responsibility inherent in carrying is the sheepdog. This term entered the discourse via the writings of Dave Grossman and became a durable, central meme within the concealed carry culture. It frames the everyday carrier as a community protector, someone whose vigilance, training choices, and equipment reflect a duty mindset. The label stuck because it provided a moral framework for behavior that often looks excessive to outsiders, but is obvious to insiders. The sheepdog's day-to-day pattern involves a concealed handgun, a rotation of equipment that adapts to the season or wardrobe, and an intense habitual alertness in public spaces. They are the person who instinctively sits with their back to the wall, maintains awareness of all entry points, and practices significantly more than the average normie, even if their formal instruction stops after the state course and endless hours of YouTube training videos. Their vocabulary is specific, incorporating terms like the Cooper color code, white, unaware, yellow, relaxed alert, orange, specific alert, and phrases about situational awareness that regulars could recite in their sleep. Their common claims are consistent. One is one's own first responder, and open carry, when done responsibly, can be. Critics often perceive branding excess and an uneven training foundation, but supporters see a healthy normalization of personal responsibility. The sheepdog's best contribution is quiet competence and preparedness. Their worst is turning the rear window of a pickup truck into a mobile billboard of political and philosophical slogans, making it difficult to maintain a low profile while simultaneously wearing a declaration of intent. Finally, residing at the intersection of self-sufficiency and logistics is Prepper Pete. This archetype gains significant mainstream exposure via reality television, but was already circulating robustly through gun blogs and forums. The core argument is existential. Systems fail, and when they do, the household that planned ahead will weather the shock. The mentality is robust self-sufficiency, maintained with a significant margin of error. Firearms are integrated into a comprehensive, broader tint. Pete prefers AK-patterned rifles, SKS carbines, simple pump shotguns, and polymer handguns, all selected specifically for their legendary robustness, ability to eat varied ammunition, and ease of field maintenance, often prioritizing quantity and simplicity over high-precision metrics. Redundancy is not a suggestion, it is a principle, encapsulated in the mantra, 2 is 1, and 1 is. The rest of the loadout is defined by logistics, bug-out bags, BOBs, extensive water storage, MREs, meals ready to eat, solar charging arrays, and comprehensive trauma first aid supplies. Online posting patterns include incredibly long scenario write-ups, detailed EMP hypotheticals, and complex rural retreat logistics, typically across our preppers and adjacent digital communities. Their arguments are deeply ingrained. Institutions cannot possibly reach everyone in time. Therefore, personal responsibility is mandatory. Ammunition often precedes food in priority because, in a theoretical collapse, ammunition obtains food. Urban centers are viewed as inherently fragile systems. The stereotypes, beards, gas masks, a basement that looks like a military surplus catalog, are often accurate caricatures. The real-world equivalent is a meticulous rural property owner or a highly organized suburban parent with a generator, a detailed plan, and a profound knowledge of supply chains and field medical treatment, far exceeding the average commenter. Their primary flaws emerge when fear dictates spending, causing scenarios to drastically outrun statistical probability. While Prepper Pete sometimes overlaps with tactical equipment, he largely rejects the operator's focus on aesthetics and clashes regularly with gamers and normies who question the fundamental premise of societal fragility. The photos of the Doomsday Pantry, neatly shelved and inventoried, paired with the stacked Doomsday guns, speak volumes about this tribe's enduring commitment. These 11 tribes, the tactical innovator, the traditional FUD, the doctrinal POG, the aesthetic operator, the fantastical mall ninja, the overloaded tactard, the performance-driven gamer, the resourceful bubba, the pragmatic normie, the vigilant sheepdog, and the self-sufficient prepper Pete define the modern firearm landscape. They are united by the fundamental right to own, but divided by their philosophy on why and how they exercise that right. We've mapped the internal battlefields of the gun world, decoding the conflicts and gear choices that define these 11 tribes. But the true threat to all of them, regardless of their preferred rifle or ideology, isn't internal division. It's the bureaucracy and legislation deciding what we can and cannot own. Next time, we dissect the legislative battlefield and uncover the 3 common, persistent myths lawmakers use to redefine and restrict firearms. And we'll expose why your favorite, completely standard rifle is already sitting squarely on their target list. Make sure you don't miss that deep dive.